Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions, episode number 122, I believe. Got it out of alignment somewhere along the line. This video tonight was actually supposed to be done like a month ago, but oh well. Tonight, we're going to look at 3 Rangers Rye single barrel, because today is the 247th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence from England, otherwise known as Independence Day or 4th of July. And as a veteran of the U.S. Army and a lover of whiskeys, I try to do some reviews of military or patriotic whiskeys on special days like today. The whiskey companies, individual distilleries, and the distillers themselves over time like to bring out the history of their whiskeys. And I love studying history, and whiskey fits nicely into that passion of mine. So my reviews and my grading of whiskeys, I always include the history, and I like linking specific whiskeys with specific dates. So now let's look at this whiskey tonight, just the facts. According to the bottle, this is distilled and bottled by Lion's Pride Distillery in Chicago, Illinois. The barrel was number 120. This is 42% ABV or 84 proof. But according to the website and my web searches, the distillery's name is Koval Distillery, not Lion's Pride Distillery. Now there's some difficulty here, but they have a record of doing whiskeys from a variety of organic grains, including things like millet and buckwheat. So this sounds like a very interesting distillery, but the confusion over the actual distillery is a bit of a problem. 3 Rangers is a separate group with an address in Sheridan, Oregon. Now, one of the owners of 3 Rangers actually used to work at Koval Distillery, so there is a relationship there. But what it sounds like to me is that 3 Rangers is a whiskey company, and they've got a foundation that they run that helps veterans, but they contract with Koval or Lion's Pride Distillery in Chicago. Everything else I've seen, other than the label on the bottle, every site that I checked, including news sources in Chicago, say it's Koval Distillery. So there you go. But I bought this whiskey about a year ago at Specs in Fort Worth, and I think the price was about $40. I checked the Specs website, and of course, as unhelpful as it is, they don't even list this whiskey, but I was just there the other day and I saw it, so I know it's there. Total Wine and Goody Goody do not list this whiskey either. Okay, so that's the facts. I've got a whole lot more details that I'll get into later, but my score for this whiskey is an 83, and the letter grade is a B+. Recommendation: this is a very tasty rye, and it's a bit different. It is, I thought initially that it was a higher corn mash bill, close to a bourbon, like a 51% rye, barely legal. But actually more research indicates that this is 100% rye, which it doesn't taste like it at all. I mean, this is a unique rye. This is almost like a Texas rye. And at that price point of about 40 bucks, a little over 40 probably, you can certainly find many other name brand ryes that are less expensive, but the flavor here is unique, maybe close to Basil Hayden dark rye. Okay, that may be as close of an analogy as I can get here. All right, so now let's go in for some details. History. The bottle, strangely, does not give a history, but it is full of military terms and allusions and symbols. I mean, there's a whole lot here on the bottle. The name 3 Rangers would imply 3 friends, but it really, at the website and in other places it says it's that they're not talking about 3 specific friends. Okay, I think there are 3 who run the company, maybe 4, but they were all U.S. Army Rangers. Some were involved in the Mogadishu thing. The website mentions the idea for this whiskey's been around for decades, but nowhere on the website or the bottle are specifics given about their personal story. Now, Houghton Young has a few details. Hotel Tango has a full story of their whiskey. But 3 Rangers teases us and gives us no story. I had to do a lot of research here and check out some interviews of these people. before I found out the story. I guess they're practicing good OPSEC. I don't know. But it says, decades ago, the founders of Three Rangers committed themselves to a higher purpose to serve our nation. They, along with the hundreds of thousands of others who've given themselves to the same commitment, sacrificed their time, health, and comfort for a greater good. This measure of devotion is a gift of those from the past, provided daily for those who currently serve and will continue in the future as the next generation takes on the mantle of leadership to provide freedom and security for this great nation of ours. And that's actually the source of the Three Rangers, past, present, and future. So that in one of the interviews I read, that's the link with the name Three Rangers. It says, decades later, that bond gave birth to an idea and then a reality, Three Rangers. Now, the Three Rangers Foundation, one address I've got for it is Tennessee. There's an interview on Breaking Bourbon website for June 23rd of 2016. The article is called Eye on the Prize, the story of Three Rangers. And that's an outstanding, in-depth, and very good interview. It answered most of my questions. And I thank my wife, actually, for pointing this out to me. And there are Three Rangers, but I think there's also a fourth one. But John Collette, founder and distiller, Jack Landers, CEO, handles the business side, and Larry, and I didn't get his last name, although another story gave me a name, and I think it starts with an O. Sorry. But all these guys are from the 3rd of the 75th Rangers. At the time of the interview, they were still using Koval Distillery, but had a desire and a plan for their own distillery. But I've got no more information on that. They also had a plan stated that they wanted to do bourbon eventually. But in this particular interview, John gives a very good brief history of the Rangers in the United States and the colonies going back 300 years. And that was an outstanding thing. Again, that's that interview by Breaking Bourbon. That is just a great interview. Now, Three Rangers is also a service disabled veteran owned small business, SDVOSB. Okay, and Hotel Tango whiskey is also in that group. To grade this history is a little bit difficult because there's a fascinating story here behind all the symbolism and everything on here, and the story of the guys behind it. And most of that story is not on the website. It's not on the bottle. You really have to dig for it, and that's a shame. This information should be up front as much as possible, and it's just not. Maybe it's a hesitancy to talk about themselves. I'm not sure. But it was in the interviews. I've read a couple of interviews now, and it's like, okay, the information's out there, but you really have to dig. So how do I grade the history here? I can go from 0 to 5 points. I'm giving the history a 3 out of 5 because it's a great history, and normally I'd give that a 5, but it's just not on the bottle. It's not on the website. And, I don't know what you're thinking there. So 3 points for history. Marketing, bottle, and packaging, up to 5 points here. The bottle's very basic, and the label, in other words, it's not a fancy bottle. The label is rather plain, but eye-catching. It's almost hidden unless you know what you're looking for. Now, in that 8-year-old article with Breaking Bourbon, they mentioned that their whiskey was being picked up by military bases at some level, but they hoped for more. And also it says that they had spread to 27 states at that time, but were growing at a rate that they could manage their growth in the barrels produced. I came across this whiskey in a YouTube whiskey show a couple of years ago by an Army 82nd Airborne veteran, Sergeant Ed Martinez. He had a show at the time called Smoking Jacket Whiskey Review that was military themed, military oriented, and this was his very first review. So Sergeant Martinez out there did me a favor by tuning me into this whiskey. But then I had to look for it, and it wasn't available here in Fort Worth. So it took a couple of years before it was made available. Now this bottle has a rubber stopper, and the wrapper was secure, but it had a pull-off tab, so that was easily operated. The label's got several symbols and phrases that are military related. Uh, the label probably could be improved in some ways, again with the history somehow, but I don't know that I've got time to go into all the symbolism here. But the star at the top is a gold star symbolizing dead service member. You know, if you're a Gold Star family, that means you've lost a family member in service. You've got the triangle, or the diamond shaped thing there is related to Rangers in World War II. You've got a compass marking down here. I don't know if you can see that up close, maybe. And then over here you've got a parachute, right? See the little parachute. And on this side you've got a lightning bolt. So there's a lightning bolt there. Speed of action, special operations, and all that. So there's, you know, even the color scheme, black and gold. The Ranger tab is black and gold. So just a tremendous amount of stuff there on the bottle. So 5 points for marketing, bottle, and packaging. Composition, up to 15 points here. The bottle says it's distilled by 100% organic grain, which is a thing with Koval distilleries. I've researched them, and they focus on organics. So there you go. This whiskey is 84 proof, but there's no age statement, and the word straight is not used on the bottle or the website. And no mash bill is available. However, in one of the articles that I read, this one by recoilweb.com, the interview says the mash bill is 100% rye. So it sure doesn't taste like that. And it says it's aged for 3 years. Well, that would explain maybe the color, because this is a fairly dark, very dark, actually, rye whiskey. So composition, 100% rye. I don't know what kind of rye other than organic. And aged for 3 years. So there we go. That'll give me a, but see, that's just an interview. That's not from the website or anything official. So I'm not sure about that. But if that's the case, then that should boost my composition score up. I'm gonna boost that up to 13 for sure. So that's going to increase the total score from an 83 to an 84. Appearance. Okay, let's pour this whiskey and then look at this in the glass. You can see how dark it is. Now I'm going to see, that's a reasonably dark. You know, in fact, that's fairly dark there. I'm going to pour a little bit of Basil Hayden dark rye, because price-wise and proof-wise, this is pretty close. And I think even color is close. So you can look at that and say that Basil Hayden might be a shade darker. You know, this is Basil Hayden, and that's just a shade darker, but not much. This is still going to be, for appearance, this is a 4 on my 1 to 5 scale. I like darker whiskeys, so there you go. The darker, the more points you get. Nose. Now my nose is inadequate, so I can't smell much. But I get a vague sweetness here. You know, maybe like a maple syrup. Close, but absolutely no rye. I just, you know, don't get any rye smell there at all, which is odd because most ryes I can smell. Most bourbons I cannot smell. This smells like a bourbon to me. It really does. And that's why I was guessing a 51% rye on the mash bill, but the research showed otherwise. Basil Hayden, I can't smell much either. Just a faint hint of rye spice there. So I have a standard number of points I give for nose that I can't smell, and that's just a 7. Now let's go for a taste. And here, this is a very good whiskey. It does have a little sweet caramel and honey on the front, but not overly sweet. Too many bourbons like Old Forester is just too sweet for me. Four Roses, too sweet. And that's why I like ryes, okay? This still has some bourbon notes though. I mean, this is caramel and honey on the front. I get some barrel tannins at mid palate, some rich spices, baking spices, and just a tad bit of the rye flavor on the finish, I think. That's unusual for a rye. It's mildly peppery, maybe a little bit of cinnamon, but yeah, definitely some wood tannins there. So it's bourbon-esque in flavor, but that's interesting. So my score for taste, I'm gonna give it a 23. I mean, I really like that. That's very nice. Mouthfeel and finish has a nice mouthfeel for an 84 proof. Not overly coating on the mouth, but certainly not thin. Surprising, really, how good that is. And the finish is long lasting. You know, medium to long lasting, and that's where I'm getting a little bit of the rye flavor on that finish. The spicy tingles are long lasting and quite nice. That is just a very good whiskey. So I'm going to say 13 out of 15 for the mouthfeel and finish. Price, value, and availability. Now, I've only seen this in Fort Worth at Specs. It's not at Total Wine. It's not at Goody Goody. And it's in the $40 range, 40 to 45, I think. You know, I bought this over a year ago, and again, the Specs website doesn't have it. So availability, though, is a bit low, with only 1 out of the 3 major stores here in town selling it. So I'm only going to give it a 7 out of 10. Neater mixer. This whiskey probably has enough flavor, despite its lower proof, that it might do well in a cocktail. Neat's going to be my preferred method here. Ice, I think, would weaken it too much. So I really wouldn't, and it doesn't have a strong rye flavor. I mean, it's got good flavor, but I'm not sure it would go great in that cocktail. But I mean, it'd probably be okay, but that's up to you. So 4 points for Neater Mixer. And then I have bonus points here. This is a military whiskey. I mean, I believe in what this is, the company's all about. So definitely 5 points on the bonus. So that gives me a total score of a 84. I raised that. I started off at an 83, but I raised it up to an 84. Letter grade B+. Now this is a bit of an unusual score, with the point total being in the low 80s, but the letter grade, you know, is up at the B+ level, because B+ represents more of the tasting notes than anything. The 84 includes all the history and everything, but so that's just how I do whiskeys. So it's got a good flavor, it's got a good taste. So recommendation. For flavor alone, I would recommend this one for everyone. It's mild. It's not an overly. Some people don't like rye because it tastes like erasers or something. This isn't like that. This is a different rye. So I think if you like bourbons, you would probably like this one if you want to get into the rye side of the house. it's a good way to start, I think. It is a military-related whiskey, so if you're active duty, retired, or a veteran family member, or if you just like the movie Black Hawk Down, here you go, Three Rangers Rye. This whiskey would be a great addition to your collection of military whiskeys like I have. So, comparison. This is a new feature for these whiskey reviews. Comparison between this whiskey and something comparable. I think Basil Hayden is comparable as far as price and proof at 80 proof. I think that's right. 80 proof. I think the price range is very similar. We looked at the coloration, and they're very close in color. Basil Hayden would win that competition, though, on flavor and mouthfeel. But I think the Three Rangers would win on finish. The finish on the Basil Hayden doesn't last as long as the Three Rangers. So these are comparable whiskeys, but I think everything that Three Rangers stands for, you know, if I had to choose which one to buy, I would probably go with Three Rangers. They're that close. Well, that does it now for this edition of Stab the Dragon. Next week we might return to our Texas Rye Whiskey Tournament. But I do have a special whiskey that's been gifted to me that I'll be reviewing sometime soon. For now, though, this is Stab the Dragon, out here.